Let me take you back to summer of this year, 2024. Fallout Amazon show releases and it generates huge hype for Fallout. This brought a ton of people back to Fallout 4 and also brought brand new audiences to the game for the very first time. I myself even went and played Fallout 4 again and also went and bought Fallout 4 on Steam so that way I could play the Fallout London mod, which you should go and try, by the way. That team did an incredible job. But after getting into the world of Fallout way more because of watching the show, playing the game again, binging some YouTube videos, there was one thought that wouldn't leave my brain. Where the hell is the next Fallout game? Fallout 4 was released all the way back in 2015, which is over 9 years ago as of making this video, which is absolutely wild. Now, yes, technically Fallout 76 was released way back in 2018, which is almost the same year that Microsoft acquired Obsidian, which we'll talk more about in a minute. But when Fallout 76 dropped, did they seriously expect that game to last for over a decade? Most of you probably remember the horrendous launch of Fallout 76, but even if the launch went smooth, it was not meant to be a full-fledged sequel to Fallout 4. And while the game has seen a solid amount of content, it is still not the game that fans are itching for today. Let me go back now to that comment that I made about Xbox acquiring Obsidian Entertainment back in 2018. Reminder for those of you who don't know or remember who Obsidian is, they were the studio that made Fallout New Vegas back in 2010. Bethesda contracted them because they wanted to release a sequel ASAP after the massive success of Fallout 3. But they couldn't because they were too busy working on Skyrim. I bring all this up because it shows that Bethesda was willing to work with an outside party to deliver a game before. Why not do it again? There's a few reasons that come to mind on why Bethesda couldn't or wouldn't want to work with Obsidian or vice versa. So let's start with the first. Was Obsidian too busy to work on a Fallout sequel back in 2018? Honestly, no, they were not. In 2019, Obsidian released The Outer Worlds, which was underwhelming in my opinion. I never got into it personally. After that, they would release two smaller games in 2022, Grounded and Pentiment. But their next big title actually isn't until February of 2025 with Avowed. This means that if Xbox and Bethesda really wanted to let Obsidian crank out another Fallout, the opportunity was certainly there. Which leads me to my next reason. Did Bethesda just not want to work with Obsidian again? I think at the time, Bethesda didn't feel any pressure to release another Fallout because Fallout 4 and 76 were so recent. They were probably more concerned with Starfield, and then after that, The Elder Scrolls 6, which holy shit, that gap is going to end up being 15 plus years after Skyrim. That's insane. But now clearly that tone has changed, and we heard it from Todd Howard himself. Last year during the Starfield build-up, Todd said that he would not be opposed to contracting another studio again to make a Fallout game. He also mentioned that he regretted how long they waited to start working on Elder Scrolls 6, and that it would possibly be the last game that he worked on. So I think it's finally setting in for Bethesda that it takes much longer to create these massive RPGs today than it did years ago. But at the same time, I think they also wanted to be the only ones working on their prized possessions, which I think is pretty clear because Bethesda also turned down a pitch for a Skyrim spin-off from Obsidian shortly after Skyrim released, which allegedly the development for Fallout New Vegas was very rocky and created a bit of a difficult situation for both Bethesda and Obsidian. And I guess that whole situation was due to strenuous deadlines Obsidian had to meet due to the short development time that they were given by Bethesda. But either way, I guess it was not a fun experience for either party. Which brings me to my third point. Obsidian wanted to focus on creating their own IPs rather than contracting. I think this one is pretty clear now with the release of The Outer Worlds and also Avowed here soon, and then also Outer Worlds 2 coming down the line. Obsidian wanted to make their own games, which honestly, I don't blame them for. I think it was actually a smart move. You don't have to worry about other companies telling you what to do. You have full creative control and freedom, and you make your own deadlines. And the big one, you make all the money. Now that all sounds fine and great, but have they delivered? So earlier I mentioned how I just could not get into Outer Worlds. And with that in mind, here's another wrinkle for you. Nearly all of the team from New Vegas is no longer at Obsidian anymore, which makes you question if today's current Obsidian team has what it takes to deliver a good RPG. I'll be really curious to see how Avowed performs. I'll definitely give the game a try so that I can give my opinion on it. But if Avowed does poorly, then this brings up another possible concern that Bethesda could have. Does Obsidian just not have the juice anymore? As I mentioned, most of the devs that worked on Fallout New Vegas almost 15 years ago, understandably, are no longer with Obsidian Entertainment. However, the CEO at Obsidian back in January 2023 said that he would still love to make another Fallout game before he retired. So clearly, if he's saying that, that means Obsidian is down. Pair that with the fact that Todd Howard also mentioned he would not be opposed to contracting another Fallout game again, and now you have mutual interest, so it's a real possibility. But even with that being said, one reason that Bethesda could have hesitation to work with Obsidian again may be due to the fact that the company looks completely different today. If Avowed sells poorly when it releases in February, paired with the underwhelming release of The Outer Worlds, Bethesda may have major hesitation with Obsidian. Again, we got to see how Avowed performs, but just thinking from a business perspective, I could see why Bethesda would have paused in that situation. So after all of that info that I just gracefully dropped into your noggin, who else could make a Fallout spinoff today? I think the most reasonable or most likely answer to that question is the team that made Fallout 76, Bethesda Austin. Now I know that answer does not sound sexy, but it is the option that makes the most sense. However, they are a smaller team, so it could take them more time. I can't seem to find an exact number of people that work at Bethesda Austin today, but for perspective, it took them around a year or two to create the release content for Fallout 76, which it did not have a ton of content at launch. Bethesda as a whole, when you combine their main studio in Bethesda, Maryland with their satellite studios in Austin, Dallas, and Montreal, have somewhere around 450 employees. Todd Howard said that post-launch for Starfield, there were still about 250 employees working on the game, so looking back on it now, we can see that they were finishing the DLC and they also rolled out some quality of life updates as well. So the whole point that I'm getting at is that it takes a lot of people and a lot of time to make these kind of games today. However, I think that making a new Fallout spinoff today would not be the most challenging thing for Bethesda to do, considering that they could port a lot of assets from Fallout 4 and 76 into the new creation engine that they just gave a ton of updates to when making Starfield. Still, if you wanted a standalone Fallout game that felt like a big budget proper sequel, I think there's another studio today that makes even more sense, and that is ZeniMax Online Studios. For those of you who don't know who that is, this is the studio that made the Elder Scrolls Online a decade ago. The studio was literally created for the sole purpose of creating this game, and they began with a team of around 250 people and have now grown to nearly double that size. Interestingly enough, back in August of 2023, they announced that they began working on a brand new title. I'm willing to bet that they are probably working on another MMORPG because that is all that they know, which it would actually be funny and such a Bethesda move if they were working on a Starfield MMO. But I think the studio would be the perfect choice to do a spin-off of any of Bethesda's IPs. They are a massive studio matching the size of Bethesda's employees now, and all they have ever worked with is the creation engine for a decade now. They're my clear-cut choice to do a Fallout spin-off, but I'm curious to see what they're working on now. Honestly though, Bethesda chose to stick around with Fallout 76 and the Elder Scrolls Online for way too long. Those games have outlived their shelf life at this point, and I wish that Bethesda would have had a plan to fill the gap in place years ago. Going back to the point that I made at the beginning of the video about how the Fallout show generated tons of hype for the franchise and brought in a lot of new people, I just think that this was such an easy opportunity to capitalize on a new and also returning audience that Bethesda missed out on. It would have been so smart if they had a game ready in the pipeline to release around the time that the show ended. Slight spoiler warning for the end of the Fallout show here, but can you imagine how hyped people would have been if Fallout New Vegas 2 was announced after watching the end of that first season? Or shit, if they even released a Fallout New Vegas 2 right after the show is over. Just such an easy marketing win that Bethesda missed out on, and honestly, it is really surprising that they just did not have anything planned to release at all, considering the fact that they knew how long the gap was going to be. I know that technically they consider Fallout 76 to be the filler of that gap, but let's be honest, nobody realistically should have planned that the game would still be popular 6 years later, even if the launch went well. Also, I know that they were planning on Starfield being their next major classic game. They were banking on the fact that it would scratch that itch for anyone that was a fan of Bethesda games, but in reality, there's a reason why people are fans of specific franchises. You have to account for the fact that you probably have lots of people that prefer one franchise over the other and don't necessarily carry over into every other game. Myself, for example, I very much prefer Fallout over Elder Scrolls, which cook me if you want to on that one. And I also really like Starfield a lot, and I probably also prefer that over Elder Scrolls, which, how about that one for a hot take? The point I'm trying to make is, even though the games are very similar at the core, the different worlds, stories, and genres all have different audiences that will play the game. You have to consistently cater to each one of those different fan bases. To wrap up my thoughts here, I really wish that we had another Fallout game released around this time. I'm not too sure why Bethesda didn't see the massive opportunity with something like a Fallout New Vegas 2, or any sort of Fallout spinoff for that matter. I really hope that they get the ball rolling on another Fallout here soon, because another Fallout from Bethesda, I mean, we're looking into 2030 at this point, which is insane. Allegedly, there are rumors floating around that Bethesda wants to take resources from the Elder Scrolls 6 to begin working on the next Fallout sooner because of the success of the show. I bet this is probably true and it sounds good for Fallout, but still don't think this is the best course of action. This route, it sounds like it would slow down the development of Elder Scrolls 6 while also still not giving a very large team to the development of the next Fallout, which means it would just still take them a long time. Either way, I hope that you enjoyed that breakdown of the status of the next Fallout game. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. It would help me out a ton, and also Also, if you want to see more content like this, make sure to comment down below. Also, go ahead and comment what you think the next Fallout game should be. Give me your ideas down below. Again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that everyone has a good one.